Okay, awesome. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the first session of Hack Sprint. My name is Nare. I'm the director this quarter for this series. Hack Sprint is our mobile development workshop series. We do this every year. This year we're going to be focusing on Swift, and we'll get into a little bit of what that is in a little bit. But first we have a little bit of housekeeping to get through, so let's just get into that. Okay, first of all, link to the slides and to the README are provided here. If a mentor could drop that in chat, that would be awesome. Feel free to open up the slides and follow along, or for future reference, the README kind of has the notes of what I'm talking about in general throughout the workshop. I'll just let it sit here for a little bit. Yeah, links are also in chat if you need it in the future. And another thing is our feedback form. We'll also link this at the end, but just wanted to plug it here for now because just wanted to mention that we have some raffle prizes tied to it, optional of course, but either way, we really appreciate if you can fill out the feedback form because that will help us improve further workshops in the future. Yeah. Link is also has been dropped in the chat as well. And I think one of the biggest announcements to make at this point is that Hack has soft launched our new Discord server. Feel free to join because if you would like future Hack Sprint updates as well as other Hack related news, even if you just want to chat with us, it would be highly recommended to join the Hack Sprint Discord. Following this QR code here, I'll let it sit here for a little bit, but on the slides, the link itself is also in the notes. But yeah, feel free to use the chatter channel to talk about anything that you've learned throughout this workshop series or about iOS dev in general. And the questions channel, especially under the Hack Sprint category, if you have any questions about the content, after the workshop, or you're kind of doing your own thing and just need some help, the officers and mentors will be ready to answer those questions for you in there. So we really highly recommend joining the Hack Sprint Discord or Hack Discord. It's just a general Discord. If not, to just interact with us as well. Yeah. One big reason to join the Hack Discord is because this quarter we're going to be doing projects. This will be tied into Hack Sprint specifically. You'll have an opportunity to create an app using the knowledge that you gained throughout this entire workshop series. And during the week 9's workshop spot, will allow you to showcase what you've built to everyone. And I put group formation forms, but the projects will be solo projects with the option of working with friends. So it'll be more so of an interest form. But yeah, projects are not mandatory, but they'll definitely help you learn the content that we teach, and they're really encouraged. And you might be even able to publish your own app in the end if you really want to continue it. And I think the biggest plug I could give is that it's also really good for your resume, to have a app you built by yourself. So yeah, look out for that. We'll be dropping that in the Discord. So this is just a general overview of what we're going to be talking about for this entire quarter. So today is just more of an introductory workshop. Of course, we'll be going over concepts as well, but this is just to get you up to speed of what Swift is and what the interface of what we're going to be working with is for this quarter. If you take a look, you can see some things that are down the line. The mini talks will be related to Swift content, and more on that and the specific content of those talks in the later weeks. But yeah, it's just something to look forward to for now. And as far as today's topics under this Intro to Swift category, we're going to be talking about what Swift is, including like some history and an introduction to Swift, and something called Swift UI and UIKit, which we'll get into that soon, an intro to Xcode, and two big Swift UI topics, or specifically Swift topics, called views and view modifiers. That might sound like some jargon right now, but by the end of this workshop, our goal is to make sure that you have a good understanding of these. So yeah. And this is just a general note about coding along. We encourage you to try things out based on what we cover on your own time, but we really don't recommend coding along. This is because we're going to be going through the code exercises together, and just in case, like, you get stuck on a bug or something, we don't want you to miss like what we're talking about during the actual workshop. But you're more than welcome to try these out on your own time. And as I mentioned previously, the README also has a lot of the talking points that I've mentioned from the workshop that you can use as notes. And this will be the same for like subsequent workshops as well. And just to plug again, please ask us questions on the Discord in the Hack Sprints questions, and we can always reach out and help outside of the workshops as well. And I think this is a big question that some people had. And the general question is, can I participate if I have and like fill in the blank with your like laptop OS of choice. Unfortunately, developing iOS apps right now is restricted to macOS. Blame Apple for this. And if we don't own a Mac device, there are some alternatives. The two of which I can recommend like publicly is that you may use something called Mac Stadium. Unfortunately, this is a paid service, but if you just like to try it out for a bit and see if you enjoy it, it is definitely a fast alternative. Yes, unfortunately, it isn't free, but that is an open alternative. Another option for UCLA students is that UCLA has a click equipment lending. I'm not sure how impacted they might be by COVID currently, but that's definitely an option in the future, if not, if they're not open now. Can we code Swift on the iPhone though? I'm not sure if there is a coding interface within the iPhone, so I really apologize about that. I don't believe so, but yeah. I'm really sorry about that, yeah. But of course, we do still welcome you to learn because, in the case that you get your hands on an Apple product in the future, or, you might be able to apply these to future endeavors. We definitely still welcome you to learn. And just to answer some questions in the chat, yes, the workshops will be this time every week, yes. 6 to 8 p.m. And just for like those viewing the recording, someone did mention that they do have Xcode for the iPad if you would like to try it. Yeah. But yeah, those are just some options. Again, I apologize. It's just the situation with Apple. It'd be like that. Yeah. I just want to reiterate this point. Please ask questions if you're confused at any point. And this is even during the workshop too, not just outside in the Discord. Our officers and mentors are here to help you with anything, either in the chat or if I see them, I'll answer them out loud. But yeah, like any questions are okay, like totally, we're here to help. So don't be afraid to ask, yeah. Also, if you feel more comfortable DMing, you can definitely ask the DM a mentor, and if they can't answer it, they'll revert the question. But there might be some people who have the same question, so it's also helpful to ask out loud too. Yeah, before we continue on, we just want to launch a quick like experience poll. This is just to gauge where everyone's at with their like coding experience. So we know how to format the future workshops. Because we want to make sure that everyone is comfortable with the pace that we're going at. So I'm just going to launch this poll. How do I, oh, there we go. Okay. Let me know if you can see the poll. Also, these will stay internal, so like we won't be sharing these results at all. So don't feel afraid to like click you know, like a more accurate choice, even if it's lower. Like we want to make sure that the workshops are like at a pace that's comfortable for you. So I'll just give it like another like 30 seconds. So I think most people have filled it out at this point. Okay. I'm just gonna end the poll now because it seems like the responses have stopped coming in. Okay. Again, I won't be sharing these results. These are just for internal purposes. So thank you for helping us out with that. Okay. All right, now we're ready to start with the actual content. So let's take a little bit of like a trip to the past to really understand what mobile development is. And what we're gonna start at is telephone booths. No, I'm just kidding, because we're not starting at telephone booths. We're gonna fast forward a little bit and let's just talk about mobile development in general. It used to be just for phones. But now we have a lot of mobile devices, and this entails a lot of different things. So definitely have phones like the one I have here. But now we also have tablets, such as like this iPad here. I guess it's not really showing up in my view, but that is one. And smartwatches as well. So because of like all these new mobile devices, mobile development has really expanded to be building applications for general on-the-go devices. And the applications that we built can be either built natively or more generally with cross-platform mobile development tools. But what does that exactly mean? Well, cross-platform means that we're using one language for many devices. So that one language can be used on Android devices, iOS devices, Windows phones, etc. The benefits of this is that it's easier to launch across multiple platforms and to maintain the code base for, since it's just one for all. But the downside of this is that at the cost of being able to adapt to multiple operating systems, it loses a little bit of like its performance because of that. On the other side, we have native, which is one language for one device. So as an example, what we'll see soon is that Swift is a native language. So it can only be built for Apple devices. The benefit of this is that we get really good performance and in terms of UI UX support, meaning user interface and user experience support, there's a little bit more tools that are available to us to use that are provided by the people who make those mobile devices. Additionally, we have a little bit of better app store support. So it's a little bit easier to get your product on the App Store using like those native devices. And this isn't just for Apple specifically, this also goes for like Android devices with their Play Store. But of course, the downside of this is that this requires you to create more code to make an app for many devices. So if you don't want your app to be restricted to just iOS, you will have to make more code bases to adapt to Android and whatnot. And a really good graphic for this is this. As you can see, like if you can treat that clipboard in the middle as like the code that you write, we can see that on the left, the native can only be like read by that Windows phone, whereas on the right, all those phones can be read. Of course, they both have ups and downs. And like the big question, of course, is which should you choose? There's not like one be all end all answer, of course. It really just depends on what you want to do. Oh, and just a question that came in the chat. This meeting will be recorded. Yes, all the workshops will be recorded. Yeah. So yeah, as I briefly mentioned, what we chose is Swift is actually a native language, and we'll see very soon for why we might have made that choice. So just to give some background about Swift itself, let's go back to when dinosaurs still walked around, the 80s. I guess that's not really when dinosaurs were around, but it's still pretty old. Back in that time, C was like very popular. You can argue that it's still very popular today, and it is, but back then it was like really cool, the newest commodity, and Apple saw this and really liked C. So they wanted to build on that, and they made their own thing called Objective-C. And Objective-C was actually used for development of their mobile products for a while as well. Actually, some really old code bases have Objective-C still. But then comes along 2014. And I put here The Year of Happy by Pharrell Williams. That was like the one song that came to mind just because it was everywhere at the time. But yeah, in 2014, maybe this wasn't the majority of people, but you know, some people just found that Objective-C was a little bit outdated. This is where Apple comes in with Swift, and Swift is like their new modern language. But what exactly is Swift? Well, I guess you could say it's a bird, but it's not. You could say it's a plane, but it's not. I mean, the logo is a bird, but not that kind of bird. It's actually this kind of bird. But that doesn't really explain to us what Swift is. As I briefly mentioned, Swift is a programming language created by Apple, and it allows for native mobile development on like Apple devices. So why would you choose Swift? Well, if the Apple market is something you're trying to target, it's a huge market, and you can develop for plenty of Apple products. You can write like Swift code for not just the iPhone for iOS development, but you can also write it for iPad, the TV OS, Mac OS, like the laptops, and so on and so forth. Watch OS is another one. And one of the benefits of using Swift over, you know, what they used to use Objective-C is that it's actually 3 times faster than Objective-C. Another like statistic that they boasted on that site there is that it's also about like 7 times faster than Python, if I remember correctly. So it's pretty fast. And another benefit is that it's open source if you're interested in that kind of thing. I found that to be really cool. So yeah. And just to touch on a little bit more of the benefits of Swift, I mentioned that you can quickly, or that you can develop for different Apple platforms. Swift allows you to really like use that same like code base and interface and just adapt it for different products, which is really great. Because, you know, if you remember, there was like an app game called Crossy Road. And you know, you can get that working on a TV too, which means there's a whole other group of people that will be playing those games outside of just the phone. And another benefit is that it has really easy integration with the App Store and with the Apple Developer Program, which is what you use to upload your things to the App Store. So if you're trying to get your app out there and to market it, you know, that the Swift is a great option. And, you know, just like a slight nudge to this like little statistic, you know, just a cool bonus is that if you do iOS development professionally, you know, the salary is like definitely not something to laugh at. It's like over 100K a year, which is like, yeah, that's pretty cool in my book at least. But yeah, you know, just some benefits of Swift, of course. So let's talk a little bit more about Swift, what Swift actually does. Swift defines the functionality of the app and the items that are on the screen. But how would we structure and show what the items on the screen look like? Well, this is where UI comes in. So UI for Swift, they're provided by Apple. There's just some tools that help us define and build the design of the user interface for the app. This allows us to make UI a lot simpler. And there's two main tools that we use for this, one of which being UIKit and the other being Swift UI. But what's the actual difference between UIKit and Swift UI? Because, you know, they're just terms that I just threw out there, and it's hard to tell why you would use one over the other. Well, let's start with UIKit. UIKit is a little bit older, and right now, most iOS applications are using UIKit. Also, just to answer a quick question in the chat, yes, this course is for absolute beginners. Of course, if anything is confusing along the way, we'll be more than happy to explain it. But this is a beginner-friendly series. Yeah. But yeah, about UIKit. Right now, if you, is someone unmuted? Okay. Sorry. Okay, getting back into it. About UIKit, it is a little bit older, and a lot of iOS apps currently are using UIKit. And if you're looking to get a job with iOS like development now, it's more than likely you would be using a code base with UIKit. However, Swift UI, which was released in 2019, is relatively new, and it's still young, but it's really the future of iOS development, and like it's the new and modern format. I would also argue like they've adapted the code to be a little bit easier to use, to read and learn as well. A lot of newer apps are starting to use Swift UI as it's getting a little bit more mature over the years. And it's definitely the future, as a lot of new apps are starting to adapt and use them. We're going to be focusing on learning Swift UI, but UIKit is still really important to mention because it's not really all or nothing. You can still integrate the two together. But, you know, it will get at the point where you could, or at least right now, you can definitely make applications just with Swift UI. But, you know, it allows the flexibility to use both, even in the same application. Of course, we don't assume any experience, but if you've worked with C++ before, so if you've taken CS31 or 32, the syntax may look a little bit familiar to you with UIKit. If you've worked with React before, Swift UI may seem a little bit familiar. But this is not to say that you would need those experience to understand how the code works. Definitely not. But, you know, it's just a little nudge to what it might look like. And just a quick aside about Swift versus Swift UI, just to clarify things a little bit further. They are not interchangeable. So it's not that you use only Swift UI or only Swift. Swift is the language itself that we're going to be using, while Swift UI is just an additional tool that uses Swift to build the UI. Again, UI refers to user interface, so the things that we see on the screen. Just like as an example, like Swift would be, I want a button, or I want the image here. Whereas Swift UI would be saying, I know how to create the button and how it would look. It can be a little bit tricky at first, but the general idea is that we're always going to be coding with Swift, but Swift UI is just some tools that Apple has provided to make these interfaces a little bit easier to write. So about actually building the iOS app, we are going to be using Xcode. And one of the reasons why, unfortunately, this is limited to Mac users only is because Xcode is only available on Mac. And what Xcode is it's this really fancy term. If you're unfamiliar with the integrated development environment, which all it's saying is that it includes like an area for coding, a device emulator, meaning like you can test how it would look on different phones, and other helpful tools to make development a little bit easier. And also a really cool thing is that you can actually test things on your phone yourself. So you would just hook it up to your MacBook and try it out. You can also use Xcode for other projects and languages, not necessarily for iOS dev, but that's not the focus of this workshop series. And just as like a general requirement, Swift UI, I believe, is only available on Xcode 11 or newer. I'm going to be showing the latest version of Xcode, and it's really recommended to have the latest version. And so I mentioned, is the Swift versus Swift UI distinction similar to HTML versus CSS? I would say that may be a good way to think about it. With using Swift UI, it does give us tools to also define a little bit of what goes on the page. But that also is a good distinction. If any of the mentors in chat have a more clear answer, I can also reiterate that for the recording as well. But yeah. I'm just going to do a very quick walkthrough of Xcode, but before I get into it, are there any questions about anything at all that we've covered? Again, you can always ask questions as I'm going along, but just to take a little bit of a break, and if you have any questions at all. Okay, well, we'll keep going, but if anything comes up, don't be afraid to ask. So let's talk about Xcode. I have Xcode already downloaded, so I'm going to go ahead and open it up using Spotlight. So just gonna type in Xcode. And it takes a little bit to open up. Oh, great question. Do I need to get Xcode and Swift UI? They don't come together. Swift UI is already in Xcode. You don't need to download anything outside of Xcode, I believe. Xcode will give you all the development tools needed. Especially for Swift UI, you won't need to download anything specifically. It is part of the Xcode like environment. Yeah, that was a great question. Yeah, let's just look into Xcode a little bit, and let me know if the text is a little bit small. I tried making it bigger, but it was looking a little funky on my end. But this is like what you see when you open up Xcode. So we can go ahead and just click create a new Xcode project. And I'm going to put this in full screen. And we see this little prompt to make a template. As I mentioned, you can develop like a lot of different applications using Xcode, but we're going to be doing iOS. So by default, this will be selected, but just make sure you have iOS and app selected. And again, just to reiterate, if you have Xcode downloaded, I don't recommend following along. And if you don't have it downloaded, you can download it like after this workshop as well. I'm just going to be showing you around right now. So this is something that will pop up once you try to make a new project. You don't have to worry about it too much. You might have to put an organization identifier. I've already had that before from other projects, but you can just put your name. And the product name will just be the project. So we'll just call this Hack Sprint Session 1. And make sure that interface is selected as Swift UI and language is selected as Swift, and we'll click next. And we'll just have it saved to our desktop here. If you're unfamiliar what this means, feel free to leave it unchecked. That's no big deal. Also, I noticed someone is unmuted. If you had a question, feel free to ask. But yeah. Okay, so this is what it looks like once you create the project. We'll see that it opens up to like some code and some like this open area here, but let's just break it down a little bit. If you've used other IDEs before, other code editors, some of this might be familiar, but if this is your first time working with coding at all, we'll try to go through it. So here you'll see all the files. We'll see that Apple has provided some files for us already, but you can add and view all the files here for the project. You can always close this tab by clicking here, which is really convenient when you want a larger space in the middle. While I won't click on this now, one thing that you can click on is this start, and this will open up the emulation. That is to say, like, it'll open up like an iPhone and show you what your code looks like, and you can play with it and see what the app can do. But just going on to some of the other main features, we have this code here, which is already provided to us. I didn't write this ahead of time. We won't worry about this now, but just know that this is where we will be editing. Another really great feature is this live automatic preview. So if I click resume here and just give it a little bit because it's a new project, we'll see that Apple will actually open up like a live preview of what our app looks like in real time. We're going to be using this we're going to be using this to be able to preview our app while we're creating it. But it's a really handy feature. Additionally, we also have this attributes inspector, and there's also some other inspectors in here as well. But what this provides is just an overview of some of the information about like the code that we're looking at. It's a lot to look at the moment, so don't worry about it too much, but in the future, you might find it a little bit helpful once you understand what these mean. This allows you just to look at like what's going on in the code, more or less. And you can also hide this panel as well, just to mention. So yeah, those are some of the main components that we're going to be looking at. And if you'd like to reference these a little bit later, in the slides, while it's not visible in the showcase, I did hide some slides that have like arrows pointing to them for future reference. If you would like to look into and just remember what each thing is later on. So yeah, that was just a brief walkthrough of Xcode for now. We're going to be taking a break. It'll be for 10 minutes, and we'll come back at 6:48. Oops. If you have any questions, we'll be answering in the chat, but I'm just going to go ahead and pause the recording for now. Awesome. Okay, back. So let's continue. Just a very super small note for the rest of the workshop. Don't worry too much about the way the code is written for now, like the specific way it's written. Try instead to follow how we're adding the content and how it looks on the screen. I think this will be more important conceptually. And then over time, as you see it being added, you'll learn how it's actually written overall. But right now we're just trying to understand overview of how we're adding it. So let's start by like this proposal. Let's say a designer has given you like a design for an app. So in this case, I'm just going to hop over to this Figma file, which please don't roast me. I have very bad Figma skills. I mean, the designer has very, okay, it's me, but yeah, I don't have great Figma skills, but let's say this is the app that I wanted to create. I really love French toast, and I just wanted to, commemorate French toast. So how would we add content to the screen? Let's see it. So yeah, just restating the proposal, let's say a designer gave us an app to create. So this is a question for you guys. What kind of content do you see on the screen? And I mean like on the app, like the design screen. Yeah, an image, that's great. Like the image of the French toast. Yeah, text. And we see a lot of text around as well. So like the main components of this are just text and image. Thanks for answering. So how would we actually go about adding this content? In Swift, this is something we call views. So the content that we get put on the screen will be called views. One great way to think about it, and I use this often with mobile development, is building blocks. So each view that gets added is just one piece of the giant like puzzle. In this case, it's a Lego Ninjago figurine, but the general idea is that like each of these views will add up to the bigger like app that we see. And I'm glad to see a Ninjago enthusiast in the enthusiast in the chat. Yeah. So you guys mentioned this in the chat, but what views exactly does our app need? Luckily for us, the way that Swift UI is designed is that like the names of them are very similar to what we would need. So first we have text. So text, which is the view name itself, will display one or more lines of text on the screen. So like any kinds of like message. These will be read only, meaning that like, it can't be altered from the user side, like people like playing with the app, at least right now for our purposes. So like that, all the text above there saying, I love French toast, I really, really, really do, that will be text for our purposes. And another example of how we can see it like written out, again, don't worry too much about like what we would call the syntax, which is like the way it's written, but that's just an example of how a text would look in the code. And if you have the slides open, yes, subscribe to Eugene Lowe on YouTube. Shameless plug for Eugene. It's in the notes. But yeah, so let's start building this app, because I think the best way to learn how this works is if we actually put it on the app. So we're just going to head back over to our Xcode environment. And we'll just keep using the iPod Touch default here, even though the design is for the, with the notch at the top. But we're just going to keep working. Where we would put all this code is in this place here called var body. Again, don't worry too much about that. As we go on through the workshops, like all this will make more sense. But just for now, all this code will go here. But we're not going to be typing it in here. Xcode actually provides something really cool. If we click this plus up here, it's a library. So we can actually look up what we want, and it gives a little bit of information too. So let's add some text to start. So we'll select text and we'll drag it over and just put it around this existing text already. So as we see here, something called placeholder shows up. That's the text we just added. I think this is really neat about Xcode, that you can just kind of drag and drop things in, because it really helps you learn like the code without knowing it ahead of time. You can just say, I want this in here. So from the code side, for our purposes, I'm just going to delete this hello world that was already there. And oh, I can make the font a little bit bigger. 1 second. Sorry, I realized the font is a little bit small. I will see if this makes it better. Okay, there we go. Oh, that looks a little funky. I hope it's a little bit more legible. But yeah, sorry, Xcode is a little bit funky to start. But anyway, going back to making the image, or sorry, putting the text on the screen. Right now, we're just drag and dropping. So I'm going to start with the first text, which was "I love French toast," and I can just edit that right in there. Oh, I can also do this for font size. Well, I hope this is a little bit more legible now. I realized it was a little bit small before. And we can go ahead and add the rest of the text. I'm just going to drag and drop for now, just to illustrate like adding it on. This is just one option of way to do it. So we're just going to add another one. This is going to be the I. Oops. Oh, it's not letting me edit. Oh, this is very strange. Let me re-add that. Sorry. Okay. I'll add the I here. And I'm going to add the next three. And if we go back over to this file, we see that the next three are in line. I'm not going to put them as the same exact like one text for those three. I'm actually going to manually drag and drop those three separate ones. So bear with me a little bit as I do that. This will go under the I. Okay. My mouse was glitching out for a second there. So I really, why is it doing this to me? There we go, really. And I'm going to add the next really's next to it. Really. Messed that up a little bit. And then the very last one. So as far as like the text on the screen right now, we have what we had before. I love French toast. I really, really, really do. And don't worry about the code for now. There's some things that we will have to talk about, but just by dragging and dropping, we've achieved that. Let me just check if there are any questions. And again, feel free to ask if you guys have any questions. All right. Now, continuing on, very similarly, we have image. So this will allow us to display an image on the screen. And something here that we haven't talked about is from your assets library. But as we see here, this image from something that would look a little bit similar to this, the code that's written on the screen. So what is this assets library? The assets library is called Xcode assets. And what this is that images that you want to add to the application will be placed in there. So it's just this large folder called assets that contains all the images that we would want to have. And it can be a little bit complicated because typically we want to add images for different screen sizes as like something called image set, which don't worry about that. We'll avoid that for now. And we'll just add like one PNG in just to show that you can add these images. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. If I just minimize my screen a tiny bit, over on this side panel, we see the folder called assets. So I'm going to click on that, and there are some things visible there already, but I have this French toast in my desktop, and I'm just going to drag and drop into there. Again, like the specifics of this is not like something to be concerned about at this moment. But the general idea is that now we can access all of or we can access this image. So if we go ahead and very similarly, we can grab image from here, and I'll just drag it under this do. And I'll change the file name to what it was, which was French toast. And just wait a minute for it to show up. Yeah, should be showing up. Oh, I have to resume. Very strange things are. Oh, there we go. Okay, I got scared for a second. Now the image appears, albeit it's a little out of frame. But now we have the image in there. Now something you might notice is this very, very weird stuff going on the side with this VStack and HStack. What is that in the code? Because that was very strange that Xcode just added that for us. What that is are these views for layout. So right now, like so far as like text and image, all we've talked about is views to add content. But there are actually some views that change how the content looks on the screen too, which is like the layout of the other views that are available. So think of it like some like container that will lay out the other views that we put on there. In our case, we'll be using stacks, which are those VStack and HStack that Xcode automatically added for us to combine, order, and group the views. And the types of stacks we're going to talk about today, one of them is VStack, which will organize views vertically, which means that like if I have a VStack of like 2 views in it, view 1 and view 2, then view 1 is going to be added at the top and view 2 at the bottom. And as we add more, they'll be added to the bottom of that like stack. If you're kind of confused about like the visualization of a stack, something you could think about is like a stack of pancakes. Yeah. And the second type of stack that there is to organize views horizontally. So it looks very similar, except we're going to be adding views from left to right. So in this case, view 1 will be on the left, view 2 will be on the right, and so on and so forth. So unfortunately, through the way that we've added it, it's a little bit imprecise. So we had all these extraneous things. We do not need this many. In fact, I'm just going to go ahead and remove some of these ones that don't need to be there. At least that amount don't need to be there. And this is going to create some problems for us, but don't worry. I'm just going to fix this for our sake so that it looks a little bit nicer, because it doesn't make sense for us to have all these VStacks and HStacks, or VStacks and HStacks where it's unnecessary. Conceptually, all we need is one VStack, and sorry, I'm just trying to remove all of these things because Xcode did a little funny thing by creating all of this. I believe that should be okay now. So I will wait for Xcode to stop complaining. There we go. So again, don't worry too much about like the code, but just conceptually to understand, we have these three texts really right next to each other. And we put this in an H stack because otherwise they would not be right next to each other. And the H stack allows us to organize them right next to each other. Similarly, we have one big V stack because everything is going to be on top of each other. Though, like, as something you might notice is that we can actually put another stack inside of the original stack. So we have this H stack in the V stack. We can definitely do this. We can even put a V stack inside of an inside of a H stack as well. But right now, our layout looks really good. If we reference the thing that the designer said to us, also someone mentioned this that in chat that they don't like that it takes 3 seconds for the errors to go away. I do not like it either because then I can't tell if I fixed it or not for a bit. It's just why I was having a little bit of a moment there. But yeah, it is what it is. But yeah, so right now what we have is like this layout, I will say, of like what we want on the screen. And just to talk a little bit more about views, is that there are plenty of pre-made views available for us to use. I only showed like, well, 4 if you count the like layout, the views for the layout, the stacks, but 2 real like content on the screen. Check into later workshops for some more advanced views and like more uses for views. Right now, it's just kind of like an overview, but later on, we will definitely be talking about like how to accomplish more with more views. And something really cool is that you can actually create your own custom views as well. This is done quite frequently too. I just linked the resource. It's a little bit like advanced for now, but just thought I'd mention that that is something that you can do. All right, so this poll is just going to be just like an interactive thing. Just to read it out loud, what do you think we should add to our app? So like the options are more French toast, an image of Pog Eugene, text bolding, text coloring, image resizing, more types of views, and nothing. The app is complete. And also, there is a right answer, though. Though all the options technically are good answers as well. But for our purposes, because we want to please the designer, there is one answer that we're looking for. Yeah, I'll just give it a little bit. Feel free to think about it. I can quickly like scan over here to just say, this is what our app looks like currently. And our ideal app is to look like this. Is the designer Eugene? I wish. Eugene would do a much better design than I did. But you know what? If we do add a Pog Eugene, Eugene doesn't have to know. Yeah. Okay. I'm just gonna go ahead and end the poll and lost the results because seems like the answering has slowed down or stopped. Oh, there was one right in as I was about to close it. Sorry, actually the person got through. Nice. Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and share the results. So the majority winner here is text bolding, text coloring, and image resizing. And while like all these answers, like, you know, would depend on your design and what you would like to do. Of course, I would like to add an image of Pog Eugene, though I don't think he would approve. What we're going to be looking for is actually to style all the views that we have added there currently. So I'm just going to go ahead and stop sharing the poll. Close that out. Okay. So the way that we're going to be like adding these like different ways to stylize it are through view modifiers. really aptly named. I hope that's the right word. Is that the right word? Aptly named. They're named really well to what they do. View modifiers essentially are a way to modify how the view looks and is styled. And like, this is a little bit of a big word, but it changes the attributes of a view. That word was aptly used. Okay, thank you. Unless that means I didn't use it correctly. Now I'm doubting myself. I'm gonna assume I used it correctly. Yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do with view modifiers, but like just to keep it on like a surface level, some things that we can do that we can apply right now is to bold the text, change the text color, change the image size. And it will look a little something like this, but again, there are so many modifiers available, just like there's so many views available to us. And of course, you don't really have to choose just one. You can add many modifiers to get the exact style that you want. It's really rare that like just one modifier, well, I shouldn't say that. You may not find that just one modifier will do the trick for some parts of your code or some parts of your application. So you might find that like chaining some modifiers together might help. And knowing what to use is kind of with experience, but also like, you know, doing some research with the code docs online. But yeah, let's go ahead and like add these modifiers to the code right ahead. See, text size is a modifier, yes. While I have not included that for this demo, text size is something that you can change, yes. Font as well, yes. I can actually go ahead and click on this plus button and go to here. Really cool, because now we can actually look through modifiers too. You know, like font. Well, a lot of these things trigger font, but font is there. And, you know, text size would fall under some of these other categories as well. Yeah, those are definitely available. But what we're going to be using is, well, if we reference to Figma very quickly, and also I should also mention, my apologies for not mentioning this earlier. If you're unfamiliar with Figma, it's just a really neat place to like mark up and like draw up your ideas for like designs and whatnot. I'm personally not very experienced with it, but I've seen a lot of people do really great designs in Figma. But yeah, let's dissect this a little bit and talk about what we actually need. One thing that we would need for the I love French toast is to bold it. And the I and do, I will just say are the default, so no modifications there. But these reallys, which is why I separated them, have like different stylings for each of them. So one of the reallys has like this blue background with white text over it. Another one is just red, and another one is italicized. So we can just go ahead and implement that right now. Of course, we can reference it as necessary, but I will just go ahead and add them slowly as we go on. So let's go ahead and first add the bolding to the French toast. Now, there are a couple different ways to add this, but one very quick way is just through bold. So I can drag, and you can even drop it on these here as well. But I should also say you can also always drag the things you get from the library out here too. Another thing I should point out is that you don't necessarily have to drag and drop. I'm just showing this tool through the library just in case that you're unfamiliar with like how it's written. So now we see that. So there's a question in chat. Can you make that 6 figures with just drag and drop? I'm sure that in some cases, you might find it helpful and you may be using drag and drop, but just drag and drop, maybe not. I'm just doing this for demonstration purposes. Well, one cool thing about the library though, that you can show off to coworkers is that it does show like this, it looks a little small on the screen right now, but it shows like some more information about it. Yeah, as long as you code without anyone looking, you could definitely always just drag and drop. Yeah. Yeah, there's no harm in doing drag and drop. It's there for a reason, you know. But right now we're not focusing on like the way that the code looks. Oh, how to open library. This plus icon right here. If you hover, it says library as well. I know it's a little small to see on the screen. I am unsure if previous Xcode versions have this. I will assume it does. If not, it might be a different icon. But yeah. This is just a very convenient way to look at it. Of course, I can always like, it's different on old version. I see. Sorry, this is my first time working with Xcode, so yeah. Or sorry, I shouldn't say that. It's like I've only recently started working with Xcode because I only recently started dipping on my Mac, so I'm not aware of previous versions. But yeah, just to continue on, of course, I could always type this in. But let's continue. This I is correct to what we want. I'm just going to skip down to this last really, which we had italicized here. And very similarly to the bold, there is also a modifier called italics that we can drag and drop either in the code or in here. I'll drag it in here just for demonstration. And now we see it's added some italics to the, I'll zoom in a little bit. It's added some italics to that text. Now, in terms of color, we have something called foreground color. And what this will do is add some color to the foreground element. In the case of text, that is the text itself. Then you might be asking, what is the background of the text? If we hover over these texts, we'll see that there's like this really thin border around it. Anything that's not the word itself, like all this region here, is the background for the text at least. And hint, because that will be something that we'll be implementing very soon. So just to start with the foreground color, the middle one was red. So I'm just going to drop it in here. And we see it autofills to blue, dot blue here, but we can go ahead and write, why did it do that? Dot red. Big text is very funky on Xcode. All right, then we have one last one left. And I hinted at the fact that the background is the area around the text. And the first one, we want to change the background color of that. Oh, I think this will work. So I'll go ahead and drag the text into here. And and what we'll type in here is dot blue. And we'll see that it changed the background, anything inside of that region, to blue. And now we're going to add the foreground color like in the middle one to make the text itself white like the design. Again, just want to reiterate, I'm just dragging and dropping to like avoid working with the code too much right now. Next session and future sessions, we will be working more with the code, but this is just like a high level understanding of it. So yeah, this looks very similar to the app that was given to us. If we just slide on over to the design right here, last thing we're missing is the image. So right now the image is going out of the frame, and we don't want that. We want the image to be like sitting like nice and tight, like near the edges. So if we go back over here, there are some things that we can do to the image as well. So to allow us to be able to resize this image, there is a modifier called resizable, which will just mean that we can change the way this image looks. So at first it's going to be a little bit odd, but what we want to do, and I'm going to go over the Figma to represent this, is because it also shows like these borders, is that we want it to sit directly and fit inside of the screen. So like keyword here being fit. And it's really cool because Swift UI provides us with a modifier called scaled to fit, which will allow us to let it sit right in the length of the screen. There's also scale to fill, which will just make sure it fills up the whole like area, but that's not what we want for now. Of course, you are more than welcome to try different types of modifiers on your own. I'm just showing some sample ones as demonstration, some of which might come in handy as well. So I'm just going to drag and drop the scale to fit on the picture here. And now we see that the border sits right nice and tight with the edge of the screen. Now I can truly say that we're complete with the app. And we did all this without even writing code. So even if it's your first time to writing code, which this might still seem a little bit daunting, which is totally understandable, you can make like these designs without even writing a line of code. Though if you're comfortable with code, of course, you might see a pattern and be able to work on it. But we will be like getting that intuition throughout the quarter. So yeah, that's all for this product actually. And a question that I got in chat was, do we need to use the resizable modifier first before using the scale to fit? Mentors can correct me if I'm wrong, but from my understanding, you need to flag that image. Flag I'm using as to say like mark it as resizable. So if we go over to this library here for the resizable, it says sets the mode which Swift UI resizes an image to fit its space, which is like very long terminology, but the idea is like, from my understanding, it's letting the image be resized. I could try removing the resizable and see what happens, of course. Yeah, now it wouldn't be able to, this is what it was before. I can also remove the scale to fit to demonstrate that, but it does not hold the properties of the scale to fit without adding the resizable there. So in our case, yes, we would need the resizable to be able to use scale to fit. That was a great question. Are modifiers always separated by tabs and new line, or can it be like image dot modifier? Great question. Putting it on this line, like a new line with the tab like that, is just a convention. You can definitely just put them next to each other. But once you have a lot of modifiers right after each other, it can be kind of hard to read sometimes. But you can definitely, it will still work if I put it on the, oops, I messed that up a little bit. But it will definitely still work if you put it on the same line. I could demonstrate that if the Xcode stops messing with me for a second. Oh, it's because my screen's a little big, I see. I can just add it there. Sorry. So although I can't really demonstrate it because this, oh, there we go. So I've added them next to each other, but it still retains those properties. But it's just a convention, meaning it's just like typically done to separate them on new lines, just for legibility's sake. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So our final product is done. The designer will be very happy. Anonymous designer will be very happy. What is this going to be on the App Store? Maybe week 9, once we go through all the workshops, and you know, I'll keep adding to it and work it out. It'll be a French Toast app. Yeah, you know, attending the workshops will really help with my understanding of Swift. Shameless plug of the workshops, but yes. Okay. Before we end off, I just want to do a poll. We have a little bit more to talk about, but let's talk about or not talk about polls, but let's do a poll. This will just be like, just to understand, like make sure you guys understand the content that we've covered so far, because really the conceptual understanding is what we're looking for today. So I'm going to go ahead and launch it. And this one's a little bit longer, so I will allow like two and a half minutes just to go over it. Yeah, read through it, answer. This is just to make sure that, just to see how you guys are doing. Is there a spin jitsi function in development for this app? Ooh, I can try to add a spin jitsi element. View is a shiny song. It is, but not in this context. Though I'm really happy that you know that. Yeah. And for those unaware, Shiny is just they make music. It's a group. Do I listen to Pentagon? Yeah, sometimes actually. I don't listen to too much of their music. But yeah. No, I do. But I listen to quite a few songs. Yeah, I'm just gonna give it another 30 minutes or 30 seconds. My bad. We're not gonna keep you here for 30 minutes to answer the poll. But okay. Just gonna give it a couple more seconds. Feel free to answer if you haven't yet. Also, totally cool if you don't know, if you're, like stuck or not sure of the answer. We'll be going through it. So no worries there. All right. Thanks for answering. I'm going to end the poll now. And I'm going to share the results so I can go through it. So the first question is, what is a view? And the correct answer is content and layout of the items on the screen. Well, I will. It is a shiny song, but it's not. That's not the answer in this case. And for those who might have answered the code that controls the behavior of the content, that's not necessarily the view itself. The view is the content. It's a little bit more specific to say that the view is the content and layout of the items on the screen. So the second question, what is the purpose of vstack/hstack? And the correct answer is to align the content in groups. And just to go through the other answers, to add new content to the screen, vstacks and hstacks are just on the code side. They won't be like their own content, but they will help reorganize or lay out the content on the screen. They're not necessarily like in the strictest sense new content on the screen. And another answer was they changed the way the views individually look. A little bit of a trick answer I put there. While they do change the way the views look as a whole, individually, they don't change like the attributes of the individual one. But I will give partial credit for that one because I did put a little bit of a trick question. But the overview idea is that they align the content in the groups and change the way the app looks as a whole. And the vstack and hstack do not cook French toast, though. That would be so great if it did. And last question, what do view modifiers do? Correct answer here is change the styling of the views on the screen. Another like kind of trick answer that that some people might have answered is adds a new view specifically with style. And the keyword here was new. It does not add anything new to the screen. It modifies what's already there. You're adding it onto views that you've already previously added there. Though of course that is a like a little bit of like a mistake that can be made. That's totally okay. Partial credit. And of course, the view modifiers did not block the view at the concert, but I do hate when that happens too. Yeah, that was the poll. So thanks for answering, everyone. You guys did awesome. So let's keep going. All right, so this is just an activity to try before next time, because unfortunately, because we're not in person, we weren't able to do like a activity given the scale of the audience, but we're definitely going to be active in the Discord to help when you do this project for sure. So something that you could try out on your own, which is very similar to what I did, is download Xcode. Think of like a basic like a theme. Doesn't have to be anything too crazy, though of course you can definitely go out and do things that you want to do. You know, I mean, I like French toast, so I did French toast. And using some of the things that we learned, start to add views to fit your theme. And what I really suggest, because I showed like a limited amount, is to check out new view modifiers online to accomplish different designs. The Apple and Swift docs are a really great resource if you want to check them out. And I really highly recommend just like, you know, trying to see how would I do this to the screen. Again, we're going to be covering a lot more views and ways to interact with the code in the next few workshops. Question, is the penguin supposed to be the Linux logo or the Club Penguin penguin? It's the Club Penguin penguin, but we love the Linux logo here too. And of course, don't worry if you can't get the app to look exactly the way you want to. This is definitely a learning process. I didn't just do this first try. I had it prepared ahead of time, but I definitely had to try a bit before I got my design working. Again, we're always open to answer questions on Discord, and please like feel free to share your creations, things that you create in Hack Sprint Chatter. Like we would love to see like you apply the things that we learn. So yeah, that's all from me. Thank you guys so much for sticking out and coming to this workshop. Our next workshop is going to be next week. Please fill out the feedback form. It'll really help us in the future, not just for me, but for anyone else who's teaching it to know how they can better their workshops. So thank you so much for coming. Yeah. Have a great night, guys. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.